people have told me, they're going to eat my children. And I don't know. I mean, some of those,
This is football. We just saw one of the worst things that's ever happened in football. Okay, so Aaron Rodgers' Jets career lasted 75 seconds after one of the most emotionally loaded nights in the history of the New York Jets franchise. Maybe it's number one. Um, I put it out on Twitter on Monday night as soon as it happened. What's the worst and bleakest a franchise has ever felt, not counting crimes, life altering injuries, or teams moving? Okay. And I got a bunch of candidates that were good and some not so good. I'll get to that in a second. I settled on Gary Anderson's kick that lost the Vikings the NFC title game. The Brett Favre pick that lost the Vikings the NFC title game. See a pattern? 28-3 was awful. And then a couple other ones. Carson Palmer getting injured against Pittsburgh, Kimo Van Alhoffen. Those sort of injuries that just take the air out of a franchise. Michael Vick's broken leg in the preseason at the height of Vick mania. Those are franchise altering games. They change how fans view the damn sport. They make people wander around in the streets with their heads down and contemplating life in silence. The Jets can't make fans who've suffered through so much suffer more by watching Zach Wilson. It cannot happen. I saw the comments on Monday night where Robert Saleh said, yep, Zach's the guy. They doubled down on that on Tuesday, which is when we're recording right now. This can't possibly happen. And we just have to think about the psyche of Jets fans in the first place. Now, I'll give you a great example. There were people who tweeted at me and said, hey, Tom Brady, 08, was as bad an injury as some of these other guys. They had won multiple Super Bowls, okay? Somebody tweeted at me, oh, what about Gordon Hayward with the Celtics? Please take this seriously. Take this exercise seriously. Don't give me Gordon Hayward, okay? Jets fans have been in the wilderness for 40 years since Super Bowl III. Do you know how many Super Bowls there have been? Jets looking back at number 3. That's what they've had. They've drafted Sam Darnold. They've drafted Zach Wilson. They've had Joe Flacco starting. They had Mark Sanchez doing whatever Mark Sanchez did for a while. They had Ryan Fitzpatrick, who, by the way, is going to be on the show a little bit later. So is Dan Marino. I don't think Ryan Fitzpatrick would be upset at me saying Marino was a better quarterback than Fitzpatrick, but it's two good quarterbacks. Okay. So the Jets have been through so much as a fan base, and you cannot put them through more. This roster is ready to win now. Dalvin Cook signed to play with someone like Aaron Rodgers, not Zach Wilson. And not, by the way, if they go out and sign Joe Flacco or Brett Rippon. I saw that out there. By the way, Russell Wilson knows the Hackett offense. I'm just saying. You can't have that defense, again, play with Zach Wilson. Everybody's like, well, maybe the floor will be higher. They will not be higher. We literally just saw this. We saw this entire season play out in front of us, and it was the defense being as fast and good as you can possibly be, and a quarterback who won did it all. That's what we have now. The Jets, I don't care if they have to mortgage their future. I don't care what kind of draft capital or salary cap hell they have to end up in. They have to make a move. I'd be calling before, and I'm going to go through a list here. First of all, if you don't think Chase Daniel is going to find a way to make a few $1 million off of this, you do not know Chase Daniel. Number 2, I would call every old quarterback that's sitting at home right now who's played at an elite level. I would call Tom Brady. I don't care if it's illegal because he owns the Raiders. I would call and make him say no. Okay? I would call Phillip Rivers. He's got a bunch of kids down there in Alabama. He's coaching high school football. Last thing I saw. But you know what? He's also said basically that if he gets the right call, he'd come back. Maybe this is the right call. I already mentioned Flacco. That's way down the list. I would try to trade for Ryan Tannehill. That'd be my first option. Ryan Tannehill is really good. And I'm sorry, really good in relation to the other names we're throwing out here, and pretty good in relation to the rest of the NFL quarterbacks. I would not necessarily go to Jameis Winston until I had to, but I would go to Jameis Winston at some point. I'd group all of those guys, Gardner Minshew, Andy Dalton, all those fellas in the if you have to do it, I'd do it category. But you got to swing big. Call any quarterback, basically, unless it's Mahomes or Allen, 4 or 5 other guys, call everybody. Everybody. Try to, I mean, the Lions can't do it, but there's a bunch of franchises that have quarterbacks who they say might be expendable if you get enough draft capital. Scour the world. Don't even think, if you want to lie and say Zach is the guy, go ahead, but it has to be a lie. It cannot be real. Please don't make it real. I'm not even a Jets fan. I know Jets fans are important to me, but this is not why I'm saying it. I just know the psyche of Jets fans cannot handle another season like last year after the emotional lift of Aaron Rodgers and coming here, Joe Douglas on stage with Boomer Esiason saying he's coming and everybody getting excited, everybody buying the eight jersey, which after 75 seconds became one of the most ironic things to wear in the history of jerseys, because I do not think Aaron Rodgers is going to want a long rehab process and come back in 18 months or whenever it is. So do not make Jets fans do this. They've suffered enough. Do not make them suffer, Zach Wilson. We will be back with Ryan Fitzpatrick after a break. Tickets to the game, merch, meals at iconic restaurants, stays at Caesar's Palace. All this can be yours when you bet with Caesar Sportsbook. Win or lose, every bet earns reward credits, which you can redeem across the empire. Now, if you haven't started yet, use the code OMAHAFULL and then place your first bet up to $1,250. If you win, great, you keep those winnings. But if you lose, you get your stake back as a bonus bet. All right, Ryan Fitzpatrick is here with Jameson. He's wearing a nice little hat. You used to dress like Conor McGregor for your Irish look here. Ryan, what happened?
I've really matured over the years. I really have. So now I actually have a couple of these caps, so it's nice to be able to put one on and put it to good use.
I love it. We'll get to that a little bit later. We'll start here. Week 1, a couple of teams and quarterbacks in what I would say is a crisis mode, like Justin Fields apologized to teammates and fans. Daniel Jones obviously down in the dumps. And I'm curious, as someone who's gone through it before, your process for getting over a bad game was what? Like, you throw a bunch of interceptions and you say, okay, we got to put this in the past. What is that like?
Well, I've had a lot of experience with it, being down in the dumps for 1 week and coming back. And, part of it is you want to get Monday over with. I mean, Monday you're reviewing the film. It's like a morgue in the building. I mean, nobody's looking at you. Nobody wants to talk to you. Tuesday you get in, you start diving into that next team and looking at the film. And then Wednesday, there's no time to think about it because the next opponent's not going to feel sorry for you. You get a whole new fresh week to do it again. And so I think that's a really important part of playing quarterback, being able to put it behind you, but then having that next game, having it come up so quickly, you get excited and pour everything into that. That being said, it almost puts more pressure on you the next week. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on you as a quarterback, but for Daniel Jones or for Joe Burrow, like guys that didn't perform well in week 1, there's that added pressure that they got to go out and do it in week 2. Ryan Tannehill's in the same boat, right? So it's hard. It's hard, but you have to leave it behind and treat it like a new week.
Tua had some of his best throws ever yesterday, and it was unbelievable to see, and it's been an unbelievable story over the past, I guess you call it 13 months. Seeing him up close, obviously, in a weird time for his career when Brian Flores was the head coach, you were the starter at points in that season. He's gotten better at what?
I think confidence has been a big thing with him. And I just think everybody sees a little more of his personality too coming out. So just being more comfortable being in the NFL, being the face of a franchise. And, he's a guy that's had a lot on his plate from high school to college at Alabama and now to being, a top 5 pick. But he is the face of this franchise. And they've done such an unbelievable job. It was talked about a lot last year with Mike McDaniel coming in and just instilling confidence into but they're showing it too. I mean, they're surrounding him with great weapons. It's a catch and run offense, which is what Tua is going to thrive in because he can throw with anticipation, because, he's going to put the ball out there accurately. And what's not being talked about enough, I think, his new ink. I mean, he's got a new tattoo, which I'm sure he's drawing strength from and feels a little extra swag with that. But it's nice to be throwing balls to Tyreek and Waddle. I'll tell you that much.
When you mentioned the confidence thing, that comes to different people at different points, at different levels of football. You probably had a ton of confidence in Alabama, probably a ton of confidence in high school. We got to the NFL level. Was the lack of confidence because he was feeling things out for a little bit? Was it because of Brian Flores? Was it because of the offense? Like, where did the lack of confidence come from, you think?
Well, I just think you're trying to figure it out. You're all of a sudden at a new level, and you're just trying to feel and figure things out. He came into a situation where I started the first, I think, 6 games of that year, so they kind of eased him into it a little bit, and then he got thrown in there, and right away we won some games, but he didn't necessarily have some great performances, and you just start, playing those games in your head, and it's just to be able for him to hit reset and to get a new coach last year, an entirely new offense, and one that really fits his talent. It's been nice for him, but he's also big life events, married, kid, lots of stuff going on to where he's really matured in the last, 3 or 4 years. And I think it's showing just in his overall confidence as well.
With Joe Burrow, so he and I talked maybe 2 years ago, and he was coming off the ACL, and he was talking about his training camp problems. And I've told listeners have heard this story a million times, but I think it's interesting insight. He basically said that when he comes back onto a football field, like anybody, his vision is a superpower, and he sees 21 guys, and his vision is just not sharp. And I'm curious, just week 1 in general. This is not even a Joe Burrow thing. Like, it feels like you're playing preseason, you're playing in training camp, and then the game speeds up so much. Is it actually an adjustment every single year for whether or not you had training camp or not? Is it actually like a deep end of the pool thing every week 1, or by the time you're 3-4 years into it, are you kind of up to speed?
Well, I mean, part of that too is, we've got like bubble wrap around us, right? So you're not getting hit at all in the off season. You're not getting hit through training camp. You're not getting hit in those joint practices. So it is a little bit of a difference just to go take your first hit or first couple of hits. But, part of it for him too, the weather wasn't great. So some of those, you saw it. Some of the 50-50 balls that he's throwing up to Jamar and the T, they're just not coming down with. They're a little bit off. And the weather makes that even more difficult, even though they're really good at it. But I will say with Burrow, like, he's such a stone cold killer. Like, that dude, it doesn't matter. You saw it last year. He came out and struggled versus Pittsburgh, right? Had all the turnovers, and then all of a sudden, had the season that he did. So I don't think anybody's worried about him. It's interesting, though, looking at those the openers in the last few years, the fact that he hasn't played very well. Maybe there is something to that, at least mentally for him.
Yeah, totally. And it's interesting, especially he loves getting 5 guys into a route, scanning the field, all that stuff. It just feels like maybe, and also, by the way, last year you had the emergence of basically teams taking away the deep ball, the cover 2 stuff, putting a lid on the defense, and he had to adjust to that over the course of September. I think he's going to be fine, but it's just certainly something to watch. All right. Let's talk about your life after football, because I think it was interesting. Obviously, are you an official member of BillsMafia at this point, Ryan?
I think because I'm part of the origin story, I've always been part of BillsMafia. Yes.
One thing guys like you have a lot of interest, a lot of curiosities when they retire and they have free weekends is they get to do whatever they want to do, whether that's go to a game, whatever. Obviously, you're on Thursday nights with Amazon. We can go anywhere in the world. Are there bucket list things where you're like, all right, I've got time. It's year 2 out of the league. Like, this is what I want to go do. I want to sit in the stands and do XYZ. I want to tailgate XYZ. What's on the bucket list for football for Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Well, I think part of that with me, my kids are involved in that too, right? So my 2 oldest boys now are 16 and 14. And so for me to have the availability to do some of these things, and one of the things maybe you're alluding to, the last few years we've gone to a Bills home playoff game.
Yeah, of course.
And it just the first year we kind of got there right at game time, sat in the stands. That was the game versus New England where they scored 7 straight touchdowns. It was just so cool. Then last year we got there early. We were able to do the tailgate. We were able to knock it off. And the boys are just, their eyes were so wide open the whole time. Some of the things they saw and learned, and some of the new words, and it was a lot of fun, but yeah, I think part of it for me, football's given me such a great life,
Yeah.
and I've been lucky enough to where my kids have been old enough, even my daughters have been old enough to remember some of these experiences and to be
Yeah.
part of them, to be brought into the locker room after the game. That I just want to make sure that A, I'm paying it forward to the game, but B, I'm just making sure that these my kids are enjoying some of these experiences with me.
You were in so many different places. Do you have a connection to every place you were in? Is Buffalo a special place? Do you think about Cincinnati like, oh, okay, I'm sure you had life milestones in Cincinnati too, but like, is it? Or did you see such a difference in the fan bases and how they embraced you that you now maybe think about them differently?
Yeah, I mean, I was there for 4 years, so it was the
Right.
longest stint of my career. I think else was one or two. Um, we pretty much had a kid in every city too. So, St. Louis is fond memories because we had a kid in St. Louis, our first one. Cincinnati because we had a kid in Cincinnati. But Buffalo was where I was the longest. It was where I clicked with the fan base the best, even though there's other great fan bases too. And it was the first time that I became a starting quarterback in the NFL. And so I think that along with
Of course.
the street hockey that we played with my neighbors and the amount of beverages and things that we had, it was such a great time in my life. And again, we had a kid in Buffalo too, so but I had so much fun over the course of my career, and every year we moved, we tried to dive in to really embrace the community and the team and be a part of it, whether it was for 1 years, 2 or 4. And I think fans really felt that as I moved from place to place.
Let's delve in quickly to the beverages part. Was that post game beers? Were we going out to get some wings afterwards? Like, what was that? That kind of, I wouldn't call it
No,
nightlife because it's not nightclubs, but it just
no,
seems like it's just a good place to hang out and have a beer.
yeah, and not like the Bills of today. We had a lot of 1 p.m. games, so there wasn't a whole lot of prime time. So for every home game, we would do it was called Crockpot Sunday, and all of the neighbors, we'd all hang out in the front yard. Everybody would throw the crock pot on in the morning, go to the game. We would come home after the game. Sometimes I'd be a little more bruised than other times, but we'd play street hockey with the kids out front and kind of all bring our crock pots out and just have a big potluck with all the neighbors. So that was usually what it consisted of.
That sounds lovely. All
That's
right, we
great.
do something called statute of limitations theater, where you can tell a story that you weren't able to during your playing career for whatever reason. Maybe it was getting a tiff with a coach, whatever. But normally we want it to be funny or not. It could be just crazy. A couple questions for you within that genre. First, what was the weirdest thing about playing for the Dan Snyder Commanders?
It was such a short-lived
Yeah.
time that it was tough. But I was there. I got hurt. I think 13 plays into my career there,
Yep.
so I hurt my hip, was out for the season. But that was also so I didn't have a ton of time around the building, and part of the reason why is because that was also the year the DEA raided the facility and took out a couple of the trainers. So I didn't really have anybody to rehab me, so I had to look elsewhere. That was kind of weird.
I don't mean to laugh. That's a very serious thing, but it is unique to, I would say, to that franchise. Were you in the building when they raided it?
No, they waited
Okay.
till everybody was out of the building.
Okay. So you just literally had to go out and find, like, were you able to find, like, what was the process to be like, okay, we have to go find a trainer?
Yeah, I just talked to some former players that had been in
Yeah.
that area and things maybe that they had gone through and different experiences, and yeah, was able to find somewhere else to do my rehab.
What is the funniest, strangest, weirdest, most memorable thing anybody's ever said to you on a football field, whether it was trash talk or not?
Oh, these are always hard questions because I mean, people have told me, they're going to eat my children, and I don't know. I mean, some of those defensive linemen are just pretty wacky guys. So,
They're just
a
trying to
lot
say the
of
worst thing you can think of, basically.
yeah, yeah. I was like, wait, what? No, they're very nice. I promise, they're nice kids. Don't eat them. Yeah, weird trash talk sometimes.
um, what's the? I don't mean to make light of it. What's the worst turnover you had in your career? Just where you're just like, come on, how did I do that?
Uh, I mean, I had a game when I was on the Jets in 2016 when I threw six
Yes.
interceptions versus Kansas City. So I can proudly say that I'm the only quarterback in NFL history that has had a game where he's thrown 0 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, and one where he's thrown 6 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. So it kind of just was a roller coaster ride, much like a lot of my career.
How do you like after in the locker room after a 6 interception game? Like, does anybody even come up and talk to you?
Yeah, Brandon Marshall talked to me. A couple guys probably gave me weird looks, but
Wait,
yeah, you
was
just
Marshall like supportive?
oh, he was always well.
Oh,
He
yeah.
was the best most of the time. Most of the
Okay.
time, B Marsh is the best. But yeah, you just games like that happen, and you move on. And you
Yeah.
saw it. We even alluded to some of them that happened. This Sunday.
Yeah.
You saw it. You move on. Luckily, you get another week to go out and prove yourself.
Last thing before we get to Jameson, I was surprised in doing all my research here how many blogs, columnists, whomever have said, "Oh, this team needs a quarterback." I'm talking about last year. We got to call Ryan Fitzpatrick. I saw with Niners fans last year, all this stuff. You are 40 years old. Do you take a call if a coach calls right now?
No, I'm perfectly content in retired life and the things I'm doing now. I did like my hip injury was not the greatest my last
Right.
year, so I don't even know if that would be a possibility physically. But yeah, I've got no interest. I really enjoy watching the game now and being able to talk about it.
Love it. Tell us what we're doing with Jameson.
Well, Jameson and I are unofficially trying to bring a pro football game to Dublin, Ireland.
Beautiful.
I've played in London. I thought it was great. We're growing this thing internationally. Obviously, Germany, we've had a few games now, or we've had one in Munich and have some in Frankfurt, Mexico City. But I just want to help steer everybody in the right direction. And if we're looking for another city internationally,
Of course.
why not Dublin? So, what basically, Jameson, we're trying to get some people behind this. I think they enjoyed that my last name was Fitzpatrick and really fit in with that Irish spirit. Um, JamesonSports.com. You can go on it. You can learn a little bit more about it. And if we can get this movement to officially get a game in Dublin by the beginning of next football season, they'll be flying fans out there and all kinds of stuff. So we've got some fun stuff in store with Jameson, and it's been a fun partnership.
I love it. Ryan Fitzpatrick, thanks for coming on. By the way, we have to shout him out. He is the reason, this was going around Twitter yesterday, the reason that Joe Burrow's in Cincinnati because of that failed 2-point conversion.
But I'm also
So
the reason that Tua is in Miami. So
you are the most influential man in the NFL.
yeah, very much so. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy.
All right. See ya.
Quick one. I'm obsessed with the Broncos. I think Sean Payton's going to fix the Broncos. I'm becoming increasingly discouraged he's ever going to fix Russell Wilson. Big stat I've been thinking about for a while. Russell Wilson's decrease in passer rating last year was essentially the biggest since the merger for a player joining a new team. Matt Castle is up there. Alex Smith is up there. Normally, there's not a huge recovery when that happens. First game on Sunday, Russell Wilson was bad. Didn't have 200 yards, getting the stats up here. In the air, his intended air yards per attempt goes from 8.8 last year to 4. Okay. At one point in his career, including 2021, that hovered around 10. So, by the way, per completion, it was 3.7 in the air. So it was all dink and dunk. This tells me that Sean Payton doesn't necessarily think Russell Wilson can return to what he was. And in some ways that can be a good thing. You understand when you have a quarterback and you start making plans to build something else. And not obviously you have to go through the quarterback position, but like at one point, whether that was Taysom Hill, whether that was Jameis Winston, like Sean Payton's winning percentage without Drew Brees in New Orleans was pretty high, especially before that last season. And so I think they'll all row in the right direction at some point. I think that Sean Payton is really good at honesty, putting guys in roles that will help them thrive, increasing the talent level, increasing the conditioning, doing all the things that Nathan Hackett couldn't. So this will eventually happen, but I don't think it's going to happen. And maybe this is only a hot take to me, because at one point I had some optimism about Sean Payton fixing Russell Wilson. It's not going to happen with Wilson, or it's going to take weeks and weeks and weeks. And if it takes a year, guess what? Sean Payton isn't going to have Russell Wilson stick around for that. So it seems to me like Sean Payton knows what he has, and that's a team that can't rely on Russell Wilson to throw the ball down the field. All right, let's get to Dan Marino. All right, Dan Marino is here. He needs no introduction. He's here with Frito-Lay and PepsiCo. Dan, what's going on, brother?
Everything's good, Kevin. Thanks, man. Just doing some things for Pepsi and Frito-Lay for the commercial we did, the unretired commercial, which was a lot of fun. I had a great time doing it, getting a lot of great responses from friends and people that it was hilarious, which I think it was, and hanging out with with Jerry and Randy and Emmett Smith and those guys that do the commercial and all the people involved. It was special, and you could see it. You could see it come through in the commercial.
I love that. So let's talk a little about football, a little about Sunday. Tyreek Hill shouted you out after the game on Sunday. He said you were a big part of it because you told him during training camp in a conversation that the receivers and the quarterbacks need to watch film together, all get on the same page. Was that something you did in your career? And where does it show up as far as chemistry goes, Dan?
Well, I mean, a lot of that too, personally, is something that I always did as a player. I felt like communication is a big deal, and they were already doing some of that. I just, felt like it was an emphasis on, that's important. And, those guys, they do that all the time. And Tyreek just, mentioned it, and it was good for my ego that he mentioned it, basically. But he is an incredible player. Yeah. And that's part of what you do is as a quarterback, receiver, offensive lineman, all that relationship, the communication is so important. So that's why I think that I had a lot of success when I played, because a lot of our guys were on the same page.
You had a lot of success. I mean, that's obviously, you just mentioned it, but man, this Mike McDaniel offense, would you like to get some reps in that?
Sure.
What makes it special?
Well, I think that the Dolphins offense is how would I say it? It's a variety of things that that the defense has to deal with, and that's what makes it special. And especially Mike. Mike's always done. I think he's a great coach and enjoy what he's doing.
Yeah. I think people, because the Dolphins have been down since you left, basically, there've been some spikes. Obviously, you have the Tony Sparano year. You have 1 year with Adam Gase. You have a little bit last year, but like, it has not been what it was. And I grew up in Florida. I know what kind of football town that can be. Take me back and just tell me, like, what was the apex for you as far as Miami being a football town? Obviously, you had the game in '85 against Chicago that everybody still talks about, but like, when Miami is rolling as a football town, it looks like what, Dan?
Well, I think that the real deal is that the fans are so dedicated to the Dolphins and backing the team, and there's so many fans that just love it. That's the main thing. And I think in the early '80s, we're going way back for the undefeated team in '72 just set such a high standard for everybody, for the Miami Dolphin franchise. So to me, that's the time when it all started. I think during my years, it was very high also, that we were always winning. And I think I would like to think that we're getting back to that, which I think we are.
Last thing on the Dolphins, just off of Sunday, off of the offense and the blitzing on at the end of the game, and just how efficient everything looked. What are your expectations for this team?
It's really, it's the team's expectations. I'm not going to stand here and tell you what my expectations are, but I'd love to see them to go well into the playoffs and have a chance to do something special, because that's what everybody works for. They work so hard, all the players around the league, everybody works so hard to be in that position to get an opportunity to win a championship. And it's not expectations, it's just opportunity. That's what I would say. The opportunity, hopefully is there for, the Dolphins.
When you watch quarterbacks around the league now, And the playing style has changed, but is there a quarterback who most reminds you of yourself? Is there a guy where you say, okay, that's if I were to say this is my spiritual error, it's this guy.
Well, it's a shame. Last night I always compared, a little bit like Aaron Rodgers, his ability to throw the ball, do the back shoulders, the quick release, all that. And it's a shame what happened to him last night. Feel bad for him. It happened to me.
Yeah.
It's a tough situation.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, but that's the guy I would kind of compare when I played to how his ability to throw the ball. And it's tough. I went through that Achilles thing. You never know when it's going to happen. It's a rare injury, but when it happens, it's devastating. And he worked so hard in this off season and all the things he was doing to get ready to, to continue his career somewhere else. And, you feel bad for him.
You were in your early 30s when that happened. He's obviously a little bit older, but take me through the process of getting back to playing quarterback and what playing quarterback looks like after you've had that injury, especially for those first couple of years.
So I think, medically now they're probably a little more advanced as far as dealing with, Achilles and how to deal with it, how to rehab it. It's a very tedious rehab. From what I remember, it didn't actually heal all the way. It was elongated. So I had to deal with not being able to get up on my toe for the rest of my career, basically. That's why I used to wear that boot you saw, and a lot of people see it in pictures, but that helped me kind of move. But I was able to deal with it. What you do, you just adjust. You adjust to your body, adjust to the situation. You adapt to it, and I guarantee you, Aaron Rodgers, if he still wants to play, will be able to deal with that.
Yeah, it's just such a depressing injury for Jets fans. I know you're a Dolphins guy and all that stuff, but just the air coming out of the stadium and how much expectations there were. I mean, I don't remember a deflation like that in my whatever it is 25 years of watching football. It was wild. I want to go like big picture here because I was doing some napkin math, and your 84 season, if you were to do what that was in relation to the average team now, you'd have almost 6,000 yards. And you would have broken the record that currently stands, I think is still held by Payton by 300 or 400 yards. You were putting up incredible numbers. When you watch modern football, would you have liked to have a couple runs against some of these defenses just because of how well you did against a completely different era of defense?
Well, it's all different, but yes, why not? I mean, the best part about this is I'm retired. I don't have to prove it. So yes, we'd throw for 6,000 yards. And I will say that defenses in the middle of my career and then towards the end, and they got a little more complex, and guys do a lot more things now as far as blitzing and changing personnel and all that than I did earlier in my career. Later in my career, I had to deal with it. But so it would be a lot of fun. I wish I could. So that's why we're trying to unretire here. And
that's right.
Doing a commercial so I can come back and throw for 6,000 yards. And if I had a chance to throw with Jerry and Randy and have Emmitt Smith, I'm sure I'd do it.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill too. But
Tyreek too. Yes,
yeah, exactly.
Waddle, yeah, for sure.
With defenses, like what specifically do you think changed? What was the impetus? Was it just more defensive coordinators getting smarter? Was it just defenses? Was it, people just looking at the influence of Pittsburgh or whoever it was? Like what changed with defenses midway through your career?
Well, that's it. I mean, I think back about, doing like the zone fire blitzes, all those things that are going on now. Guy Dick LeBeau, he's in the Hall of Fame. Dick LeBeau is a famous player and also a, defensive coordinator. I think if I remember correctly, he was the first one that started to introduce a lot of that stuff and the mugging and getting 11 guys on the line of scrimmage. And a lot of guys did that. They didn't do it as much as, the Steelers did. So that's when it started to kind of change, and they're still doing it today. And it's the substitution, the different personnels. I mean, all that. When I first came in, it was pretty standard what you were doing. Everybody was to change a little bit, but not that much. Now it's changed a lot more. So you have to, as a quarterback, you have to be a lot more disciplined in, your protections and everything that you do.
Is there a rule change that you think opened up things for modern quarterbacks now that you kind of wish you had a couple of years ago?
Well, I think the fact, and I agree with it. It's, it should be that is that you can't hit, the quarterback the way you used to. You can't get a shot in the head. You can't go under your knees, and that's a good thing, I think. Because when I played, you were allowed to do that, and players could take shots at you. So that, and then the fact that, as far as down the field, the PIs and things that they'll get more calls now because they're they used to be able to touch you down the field even up to 5 yards, even though that was the rule. They were more physical, and there's a lot of guys that could tell you that same thing, that it changed in that way.
There's a video that has now gone viral over the past couple of years because Mahomes does behind the back passes in practice, but it's of you throwing a dart behind the back in warmups in I assume the mid 80s.
Yeah.
Yep. Why did you never try that in a game, Dan?
It never came up. It's one of those things that I practice it for fun.
Right.
You never want to throw, you never wanted to throw behind your back unless you had to, which it never really came up. I don't know if Mahomes has done it in the game or not. Maybe just
not really. No.
Practice. Yeah. And it's not what you want to do, but it's fun. It's something that I just got to have fun with in practice and with the players and pregame and all those kind of things. So yeah, it was the Mark Clayton. It was something, and it was actually in Buffalo. We were doing that for pregame. Yeah.
Would you like to see Mahomes try it
in a game?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. As long as it's complete.
So we do something called Badasses, which is, and we do different versions of it. Could be best player you ever played with, or most badass player, toughest, whatever. But I want to flip this because you played against so many great players and so many defensive ends and pass rushers and cornerbacks, guys who would make plays. And I want to give you the floor. Give me the most badass guy you played against and why. I'm talking toughness. I'm talking making a play where you never thought you could. Like, give me the badass in your book.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, playing Bruce Smith, for twice a year, sometimes 3 in the playoffs for 15 years or so straight, he was always a problem. And we had to really account for him. And I still I think he's the sack leader, right? In the history. Yeah.
He's up there. Strahan.
Yeah, he's definitely up there. I think he is the sack leader, but dealing with him, he was a badass for sure because the way he played, the style, Buffalo football, and just knowing that I had to face him and our team had to face him and what they did in Buffalo for, twice a year for 15 years was a lot.
Was there healthy respect between you two guys, or were you guys up in each other's faces during the game?
Oh, no. I never got in anybody's face unless, someone was talking too much. But no, Bruce was always healthy respect with Bruce. And, he's a true professional and always was, and just an incredible, great player.
Love it. Dan Marino, tell us anything more about your partnership with Frito-Lay and PepsiCo.
Well, first of all, I started that way back when Montana and I did that after the Super Bowl. We did a commercial together for Pepsi, and I've done some things over the years for them. Always enjoyed working with them. And then the commercial I thought was funny. It was enjoyable to do, to be around those guys, Randy, Emmett, and Jerry was a lot of fun. And I eat, my favorite snack is Fritos, and that's true because my grandkids and we eat it a lot together when we're watching cartoons.
Awesome, man. Dan Marino, thank you so much for coming on This Is Football.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it, man. Thanks. Have a great day. Peace.
Take it easy.